Alright, so let's talk about the squat and how you can squat more weight. The first thing I do want to talk about in trying to improve your squat is you think about physics. What is the optimal bar path of a squat if it's on your back? If you look from the side and you get a barbell, and you have to just imagine the end of a barbell going down, what do you expect to see? You need to be able to see a vertical line. I'm going to use this PVC pipe as an example. If you have the bar on your back like so, and you're squatting, the bar needs to go straight down. And sometimes what happens, why the bar will feel heavy sometimes, when you squat initially, the bar will tip forward. And for 135 pounds or just plate on each side, it's not going to make that much of a difference. But if you have 300 pounds, this little bit of a pitch is going to make a big of a difference. So it's important that you have a vertical bar path. So one thing that you have to think about also is it depends on the bar placement on your back, whether you're doing like a low bar for powerlifting, or if that's where you like to squat, or high bar for Olympic lifting. I'm not here to debate what's better, or maybe I will. I'll just give you some ideas and some thoughts. There is no one all be all for squats, but you just got to think about your considerations for what you're trying to accomplish. And in the case of most people, people are trying to put on muscle, they're trying to look better, and they're trying to get stronger. That's what we're trying to do, right? But to kind of become a little bit more nerdy and a little bit more geeky and just kind of get more into the nuances of things, because that's the reason why I'm making this video, is why it's interesting to me, is that what are you trying to improve and why? Okay, then you can decide. Like for me, in my case, in powerlifting, or anyone out there who's listening to this video, watching this video, who wants to know more about powerlifting, or I should say, someone who's had a few powerlifting meets already, and they want to get better at powerlifting and really improve their total, you don't want to squat below parallel. You want to squat at parallel. Not to say that you'll never squat below parallel, or you'll never do an Olympic lift, or Olympic style squat. It's that for the most part in the actual competition, you don't want to squat below parallel, because all you're doing is you're making a further distance of travel, requiring more workload. Think about that. The goal in powerlifting is to get the biggest total, the biggest squat, the biggest bench, and the biggest deadlift. There's no point to squatting below parallel or at parallel, anything below what's necessary for competition to get your 3 white lights. In the Olympic lifting realm, you have to have the flexibility to get to the bottom for lots of different reasons. How do you think someone who's 165 pounds or 180 pounds snatches over 300 pounds over their head? They're definitely not front raising that bitch, and they're definitely not freaking strict pressing that thing. They are getting under the bar. There's a lot of technique in that, and the lower you can get under the bar, the better. You need to be able to know why you're squatting. If you're just a beginner, you just find one technique and you stick to it. Typically a high bar squat, or a spot in your back that's very secure where you can build a callus on your back, or the tolerance for it. Because for a lot of people, one of the first things when you first learn to squat is getting comfortable with the bar on your back. Now, if you've been squatting for years already, you should be able to squat more than 300 pounds. That's just, at least that's kind of my viewpoint of it. Now, if you can't squat more than 300 pounds, or you've never squatted 300 pounds, it might be a little bit different story, because the big thing that you understand is that you're holding weight on your back, and you need to be able to tolerate the bar. In order to get better at lifting weights, you need to get strong. The other thing you need to remember is you need to be able to stay tight in your stomach and your core. You need to be rigid in your entire upper body. If your upper body is not rigid and the bar gets too heavy, the bar will move on your back. If you want to get the most amount of weight, you want to lift the most amount of weight, you need to brace that bar against your back as tight as you can. Dan Green said that the way he sets up for a squat, he squatted over 750 pounds, I think it was, the last competition he did, he does a method similar to Sam Bird, who is a power lifter. And if you notice, they do a low bar squat. Now, why a low bar squat versus a high bar squat? Because when the bar is lower, you get more leverage. That's just a simple reason. Now, before I get too off topic, you want to brace and get super tight behind the bar, and he says to wedge yourself in there, and that takes some practice. You need to be so tight against that bar. Your body is so tight with your arms that if you were to move your arm, it would cramp. That's what Dan Green says when he sets up for a squat. And it's sort of an interesting idea. And it just told me when I went to the seminar, in January, was I'm definitely not setting up tight enough. So when I came back to the gym and went back to squatting, all I ever practiced was setting up. That was like the #1 thing I focused on, is setting up and staying super tight. The other thing too, when you want to squat the most amount of weight, is understand what style of squat you're doing. Everyone's going to have a little bit different of a stance, and each stance will have different factors in kind of what muscles you use. Now, when you're trying to increase how strong you are, you need to practice the rep range you're going to work in. One of the things you do want to put a lot of emphasis on is you want to put focus on doing mostly a high bar squat for multiple reps, because that is what's going to be mostly useful for you in CrossFit. And I just say that because having good strength endurance is good, like being able to have a solid 3 to 5 rep max. That's really strong. I feel that will carry over more to other sports or more to the CrossFit events or CrossFit style workouts than a 1 rep max. Not to say that a 1 rep max isn't going to help you. Olympic lifting is kind of different in the fact that you need the more flexibility, you need to get lower, because if you're going to snatch, someone who, a 165-pound person that snatches 300 pounds, or a 180-pound person who snatches, 300 pounds over their head, they're not front raising it and they're not strict pressing it, nor are they doing a bicep curl or reverse curl with it. They're moving the bar a little bit, moving their body a lot, which means the further they get to the bottom, faster, they'll get the position to get the bar over their head and stand up into a snatch. I've seen Kendrick Ferris freaking hit the bottom of a snatch, and he's like, butt is damn near touching the ground. He gets out of it. It's fucking amazing. So if you're trying to get better for Olympic lifting, a lot of what needs to be focused on, and if you've done any programming, you've read some stuff already, you know how important the front squat is. The front squat's really, really important. Being able to have this front rack and being able to hold weight on your shoulders and being able to have that motor kinesthetic awareness of where you need to be to stay upright. Because again, you want as much as possible to have a vertical bar path, as I said before. Whether it doesn't even matter because if you do standing up from a 300-pound snatch or you want a vertical bar path when you're standing up as much, because that's just how it's going to work. It's understanding what's weak in your body. Is it hamstrings? Is it glutes? Is it quads? Is it flexibility? It's tackling those individual things. And is it low back? Is it core? Is it upper body tightness? It's knowing exactly what it is that you're weak at that you need to improve. And once you figure out what you need to improve, you work on a technique or accessory movement that will build that weak muscle, so that way you can break through a plateau or make heavy weights lighter, if that makes any sense. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video or you'd like to see more videos of this kind, please click like and put some comments below. One thing I do want to do that I haven't been able to say yet is I would love to hear kind of what you're trying to improve in your squat and where you think you're the weakness. At what weight do you notice the most form breakdown? In my squat, 265 seems to be where my form breakdown is around 4 or 5 reps. I can squat over 429, or squat over 429 in competition, but that doesn't mean that my form was perfect. So those are just some things to consider, and I'll catch you in the next video.